as I was thinking about Stripe on the way up here, about like what is it about the business that's different or unique? I won't pick on any one like other developer-facing tooling company or something, but there's plenty of other companies that built products originally designed for developers that didn't achieve this status of like, almost like Stripe is like a state of being. Like it has this like ambient quality about it that, and you can just see it in the way people talk about Stripe as a company, which of course has a lot to do with both of you, but also like it's achieved this thing as an entity separate from the both of you. And I'm curious like why you think that is and how much of that is a, lucky random side effect, how much of that was like really deliberate based on decisions you made or the kind of company that you wanted to build, because, whether you wanted to or not, like it has come to embody like a certain era of technology business in a way that if you looked at other companies that also build, similar-ish products, let's say for developers in the early days, was like did not achieve that same thing. And I'm curious like to what you would attribute that difference.
I think part of it is we're a self-serve product for a fairly ubiquitous need in a domain where it's actually kind of hard to be self-serve.
With a discerning audience.
Yeah, and then right, with like if the audience is creators and founders and business owners, they tend to be kind of exacting in their judgments. They kind of have to be because they are with respect to their own thing. And so I think a lot of the other developer-oriented companies, like take Databricks, unequivocally an awesome company, right? But Tommy, our youngest brother, mentioned that he's seeing a physiotherapist. Is that what you guys call it in America?
Yeah.
Okay, great. That was some other word. Anyway, seeing a physiotherapist, and the physiotherapist mentioned they were using Stripe. I presume that physiotherapist is not using Databricks, and so
Right.
and so I think some of it is probably just about like the nature.
It'd be awesome if they were though.
Yes. Yeah, really want to meet this person if they are. And so, like the fact that we we work with Amazon and Ford and Hertz and like these giant companies, and Databricks, of course, also serve the enterprise, but that we also kind of exist at the low end is part of it. And then maybe there's people at Stripe really care.
The details.
Yeah, there's a catchphrase at Stripe of really, really, really caring. I think the returns to care and to sweating details and so on are also unquantifiable. And part of the problem with them is it's kind of a brand thing, and so you can, in any narrow individual case, you can coast on not caring. Like if Apple sent you like a poorly designed, invitation to something, you would still go because the overall halo of all of the credibility that they've accrued over multiple decades, will carry them through even a single poorly executed thing. But that means that the local incentives to care are actually not that strong because it's kind of this collective action, this kind of public goods problem, within the company where you can benefit from everybody else's work. And so I think the aggregate long-term returns of caring a lot are super high, but the individual local returns are low, and that creates this collective action problem. Most companies fail to solve it, and then and I don't particularly credit us. I think this was really deeply embodied by like a very large fraction of the first 100 people at Stripe, but it became this thing with a tremendous amount of momentum and endurance. And people at Stripe today are still maniacal about like padding issues and spacing issues and consistency issues where you use this word over here but that word over there, and it adds up.
Is there a detail you're most proud of this type in Stripe's history?
Well, the one that people often cite is we show you your API keys in sample code, and a lot of errors in Stripe will tell you what we thought you were trying to do, not just like what the actual mistake is. And it's funny, even though some of those were implemented like 10 years ago, we'll still see a tweet occasionally where we saved somebody a few hours because not only do we like tell them that their thing didn't work, we told them what we think they were most likely trying to do instead.
I think this also may be a to be controversial here, I think it's very harmful to bring consumer product thinking to a space like Stripe, or I think kind of a B2B space generally, because I think there is implicit or explicit a sort of, you just have users by the wheelbarrow, you treat them in aggregates.
I really agree with this point.
You talk about MAUs. Everything is kind of statistically tested.
On the active users.
Yeah, exactly. But again, people in the value would say MAUs as their, way of referring to the people who are using the product. Yeah. But, you are just, I'm not a number, I'm a free man. You're a number. And everything is statistical, and everything is kind of, like LinkedIn with the the dark patterns. It's like, complete your profile. Everything is kind of nudging you towards some business outcome. And what we really try to constantly clobber people over the head with at Stripe is these are people starting a business who are generally really talented, and they have some great idea, and they have kind of a vision for it, and they're making it happen. And they have a pretty sophisticated understanding of their space and business and finance and everything like that. And you can just see it if you go kind of talk to any of them. And so we have another value of Stripe that we try to really inculcate is talking up to the user. Like when you're in the, when you're writing product marketing copy, and Patrick and I will still spend a lot of time, reviewing that. You're not trying to bamboozle them with, some whatever highfalutin statements. You're trying to explain to a busy business owner who, again, going back to Charlie Munger's multiple mental models, is kind of constantly switching between, product and business and finance, all these kind of things, why this thing will solve some kind of specific need that they have. But it's not, hucksterism. It's not sloganeering. It's like having a technical discussion with someone who really knows their shit. We, Patrick mentioned this weekly all hands. We every week have a user at this kind of weekly, fireside, we call it, where we'll just for, 10 or 15 minutes, again, they're busy, we'll interview them about their business, how they started it, how they got there, how they're using Stripe, what they'd like to see do better, us do better, everything like that. I think that's important to stay connected to this, because again, I think the classic technology product management domain is a bit, I would say, it's not respectful enough of who the users actually are and how capable they are.
Well, and just reckon, but I don't. I think that's maybe too normative. Where
maybe it works fine for those businesses.
I was going to say exactly. Like the thing that we have to take seriously is any sign up could, in principle, be in not that many years in the future. 5% of our revenue, and so kind of allowing,
because they got really big, not because we got really small.
Yes, allowing any of them to fall off the wagon and just kind of shrugging our shoulders. Like basically, if the distribution of possible sizes of our users was normal, then I think you could shrug your shoulders. And if 1% of them something goes wrong, then like, okay, that's unfortunate. We'd like to be less, but like it's fine. But our tails are really heavy, and it's koshy or something, but it's not normal. It's power law. Exactly. Whatever. It's something with a lot of kurtosis, and worse. Sort of the concern you have to have is if something is going wrong for these customers, maybe it's actually kind of biased and correlated so that it's the ones who are more successful who are more likely to encounter the issues. And so kind of therefore, I think your intuition has to be, to John's point, kind of exactly the opposite of the consumer domain, where when you hear about a single case of something going wrong, your ears really prick up and you get interested because, maybe it's the companies that are selling a ton in this new market that are. I mean, an example we had in the early days of Stripe was businesses implementing these multi-sided ecosystems were consistently running into like compliance problems and payout problems and mechanical problems, whatever, and kind of an attitude of, well, not that many of our customers are doing that. Kind of shrug would have meant that we wouldn't have discovered this incredible opportunity that has been a huge deal for us.
We're big into anecdotes here. I think there's probably kind of the correct amount of data in the world. People have realized that data is important, but sometimes they underestimate anecdotes, because it surfaces the questions that you should be asking. Data is good if you have a specific question and you want the answer to it. But I mentioned about our mum did growing up. Our dad, for a while, ran a hotel, a small hotel on the shores of Lough Derg in Ireland. And what I found funny is you do not need to run a complex user research study to know if you're doing a good or bad job in a hotel. You can do that. You can just walk around and like, oh my God, this waiter is terrible because these people have been waiting half an hour for their food. You just walk around and kind of the questions you should be asking will slap you in the face. And I think
Sometimes literally.
exactly, yeah, depending on how bad things have gotten by faulty towers. But you know, in the tech case again, people do a lot of the data analyses, but just spending time with the actual, people talk about management by walking around, but they talk about it in an internal management context. You got to do the management by walking around with the customers and in the actual market. Yeah.
How much more likely do you think it was that you became entrepreneurs given that both your parents were? Like, is that something? Is that something we can simulate? If that was a big impact,
Run a little Monte Carlo. Yeah.
Well, it's like back to your what makes more businesses. My dad was an entrepreneur. I'm an entrepreneur. Like your parents both were. You both are. Maybe there's stats on this. So we could just answer the question. But for you personally, how much of an influence was it that they were both doing that, and you watched them?
We'll do the twin studies, find some twins separated at birth.
Yeah. Well, I remember when we were playing in the garden, when we were like, I don't know, 6 and 8 or something, we were playing at, or we used to often play at, we had no internet at that age, so, we had to play in the garden. And we'd play at like, I don't know if we were even like starting a company, but like, I guess running a company. I guess just because that's what our parents did. Like, if our dad was a fireman, we'd have been firemen. So it's hard for me to say no, it had no effect, when I think back to sort of those anecdotes. So I don't know, you can never, I think, reverse engineer your own childhood. And like, even if it is somehow attributable to our parents, I don't know, maybe it's genetic, like maybe we lack the, risk averse gene or something, but, we've underdeveloped prefrontal cortices or something. But yeah, it's probably not totally coincidental.
There's also probably an element, you probably remember seeing this with your dad. The way like, starting a business goes in and out of fashion, and famously after the social network, everyone decided they want to go start a business. But at least I think a lot of what we saw growing up was honestly maybe even just the work ethic. Like there's other things in the customer centricity and things like that. But if you just take a single thing away, it's like the absolute just hours on the problem that you have to put on it is maybe useful to see firsthand. And I think that probably subconsciously, seeps in. And again, I think you probably saw it with your dad. And I think maybe if you haven't seen that up front, maybe you're operating with a disadvantage if you haven't just seen that firsthand to really ingrain.
Yeah, like we work less hard. I mean, we work quite hard on Stripe, but I think we work less hard on Stripe than, our dad did at the hotel or our mom did at this training company. And just, like, we are not at the office for most of the weekend. He was at like his office, right? Necessarily. And so, even just that, right? Like we get to take weekends.
Yeah. I've seen you talk a lot about your relationship with your parents and their businesses and everything growing up. What's it like as adults? Like, how has it shifted in interesting or surprising ways as you become adults and getting married and the whole deal? What has shifted most and what's it like now?
Well, it's interesting to watch now with a bit more, I don't know, I guess with just more adult perspective to see kind of where maybe our childhood perceptions were or weren't correct. And I don't know, I guess I'm not sure if we used to make fun of our mom growing up for, working a lot and like in a kind of admiring way. And now she retired nominally a few years
unsuccessfully.
Exactly. She's
had multiple failed attempts to retire.
She tried to retire a few years ago, and now somehow has found herself. I think she's going to publish. She helped a hospital. Our youngest brother has a today relatively mild physical disability, and so she became very interested in its treatment and how to do that well, and very long story short, ended up writing a book about successful treatment for cerebral palsy. And through that, learned that, well, there were these other conditions that don't have good treatment manuals for them. And so she's working with now employed, in fact, by a hospital in Minnesota, where they're collaborating to produce a whole series of books on the treatment of different physical conditions. And so I think 5 of those books will come out, over the next 12 months. Anyway, so this is her retirement.
Yeah.
So it's been
a beach for her.
Yeah, and just kind of I guess interesting for us to watch as adults.
Part of what our mom is doing is also working. We're doing some stuff philanthropically with her in Ireland, improving kind of cerebral palsy care. And again, it's amazing the degree to which different treatments are happen on a geographical basis for no real good reason. Like, the condition doesn't know where you are. And so they have some of the leading treatments in the world for cerebral palsy are in Australia, where they've developed these interventions that work really well. And so they're, now working on rolling them out. I mean, it's not just these, they're also, doing some research and stuff like that in Ireland. But I get very excited about the idea of how can we advance the state of the art.